If you're a parent, you know that your child is constantly being introduced to letters, numbers, colors, animals. All of these educational resources that you can find on YouTube and that you can purchase at various stores, they all serve to teach in a very methodical way, really, what the colors are. We teach colors, letters, and numbers through repetition and immersion because we know that if you just let a baby play and you let them play in the right way, they're going to pick up on things in their environment. They listen to us speak. We point out colors and we say, "What color is that?" And they start to associate the right colors with the right colors, you know? We rarely teach sound that way, though, especially musical pitch. So if we were to teach babies that C has a particular sound and D has a particular sound, they are more likely at a young age to pick it up. And there is sort of a cutoff. There is an age where research suggests that things close up and you can no longer teach babies things like perfect pitch and these really deeply ingrained musical abilities. And I don't know that that's entirely true because I taught at the college level for many years and I saw plenty of students who would come in day one, not have a very good ear, and they very much impressed me with the way that they were able to develop over the course of the next 2 to 4 years and even over the course of a single semester. So we can't underestimate training, but we also can't underestimate that your baby right now has this immense capacity to learn. Their brains are like sponges. They pick things up, but you need to lead them in the right direction just a little bit. So why don't we introduce C and D just like we do the colors red and blue? We see them all the time. We see these colors and they're constantly reinforced. I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can do this and why I've actually created something that will help you to do this with your child. Okay, so this is sort of how we misunderstand pitch learning, and even adults do this. We try and describe pitch. We try and say, like a metaphor, F sharp is aggressive, E flat is mellow, C is dull, A sounds brighter, E sounds bright, but it's not quite, or maybe it's a little more bright than A. This is a mistake. We are using descriptions to talk about something that we hear. We should only be using our ear. So describing a sound, I want to make this point, is not the same as experiencing it. I can say an F sharp is aggressive. And even if I go to the keyboard and then I play an F sharp, that there's an F sharp, here's an E flat. The E flat, compare it to the F sharp. Some people are going to hear that F sharp has a different tone color than the E flat. If you can't hear it, it's not a big deal. A lot of my students, when they take some of the courses that I offer, they'll tell me, no, I don't hear a difference between all the notes. They just sound high or low. And then 6 months later, a year later, all of a sudden they come to me and say, okay, yeah, I can hear a difference. There's clearly a difference. So you'll have to take my word on this a little bit, but this is a well-known thing. It's what I call tone awareness, the ability to detect that there's differences in sound. Your baby can do it at a much higher level, most likely. So the problem is we can't describe sound with adjectives. If you think about this, if you were to say red is energetic, it's exciting, would that be able to teach a blind child what red looks like? I want you to think about something for a moment. If I show you the color red, and you can see colors, you're not colorblind, then you will be able to tell me other hues that match red and that are close to it. This top bullet point is red. The next one is like a greenish color. The bottom one is purple. I can show you that, and then we can do comparisons, and over time, especially your baby, they will start to associate different colors with names: red, green, purple. But nowhere do we sit there and we say, red is energetic, green is like nature, purple is like the sunset when it starts to flicker, or purple mountains. I don't know. I actually got in trouble as a kid for drawing purple mountains, and teacher said their purple mountains don't exist. But I'm like, well, purple mountains majesty. I don't know. So look, the point here is that when you are trying to describe sound, that's good. It's good because as an adult, you are trying to get into the sound. You're trying to hear some difference. And if I say, well, I hear F sharp is aggressive, I hear E flat is mellow, then you are recognizing intellectually that there is a difference. But you can't describe a sound. You simply have to experience it. And that is something that babies are extremely good at. We need to give them very little information. We just need to set it up in a context where they realize, oh, there's names for these sounds I'm hearing, and I can identify them. And then we need tons of repetition. And so I think a lot of people, they'll go to a keyboard and they'll play a C, and then they'll play a D, just as an example. And they'll tell their child, here's a C, here's a D. And then the next day, maybe on the day of, the child's actually able to match pitch, which is great. But then the next day they say, what does a C sound like? And they expect if the child has perfect pitch, they're going to be able to sing it back. But does it work that way with colors and numbers? Do you teach a child one and all of a sudden they know what one is? Do they know instinctively that two comes after one? How long does it take to teach them? If you have a child, you know this is a month-long process, months, and even up to 2, 3, 4 years. It just depends on how your child develops, right? So how much exposure do they need to be able to identify these notes and these pitches? The same amount, but we don't do it in the right way. And so I want to talk a little bit about why babies are kind of the perfect students and how we can start to teach them how to develop this ability to hear. It's really important, and it kind of lets you know a little bit about how perfect pitch and relative pitch, which I think is more important, can be developed for adults too. We also need lots of repetition, but adults sometimes need a little more explanation to understand what they're listening for. And we can do that as adults, and we almost have to. Kids are at a very, especially babies, infants, even preterm infants, there's studies on this, they're at a very good stage. One thing I want to say now, because it's so important and I don't want to forget it, do not do the thing where you put headphones on your stomach if you're pregnant, hoping that the baby will be able to hear that. What will happen is that noise is so loud, it can actually be damaging to your child. Ambient sound is fine. If you're trying to play classical music, don't do the headphones on the stomach. We see this in popular music a lot in movies and things like that, but it's not good. When I was thinking about doing that with my own wife, when she was pregnant, I researched it, and I came across a lot of research that indicated that it is actually potentially a very dangerous thing for your child. It will sound like a rock concert. It's way too loud in there. Ambient sounds are fine. You don't need to put it there so they hear it better. And besides, the other thing is, if you're trying to get your child to learn pitch and learn music and have that as part of everything else, the math, language, speaking ability, all of these really important characteristics we want our children to have, you don't need to force it. They are designed to pick up things. We have evolved in a way where we just pick things up if we're allowed to do it. So don't force things. So let's talk a little bit about why babies are really the perfect students. This is where a lot of people get sad, okay? Because infants' brains are wired to absorb sound between 4 and 10 months. That's the information we have right now. And so if your child's like a year old, 4 years old, 2 years old, you're probably like, oh, I missed the window. And according to research, maybe. But some studies say that pitch learning window closes closer to 2 years old. So now you have a little bit of a greater gap. So what's happening here is between 4 and 10 months is the time when they pick things up most effectively, and even in their sleep. By the time they get to about 2, the brains are starting to form more, and they're starting to become more intellectual about their environment. And so that's when things shut off. But if you can, in my opinion, and this is not proven. It's my experience working with other students, and I'm talking college students. If you can train them in the right way, 2 years old is still a great time to start learning relative pitch, perfect pitch, musicality in general. You've just got to do it in a consistent way. So don't worry if you read these things 4 to 10 months, your time is limited. Yeah, it's better to start as early as possible. And I've even heard things that say before 4 months don't matter, but then there's another research study, which you can view on babyeartraining.com, that talks about how preterm infants can actually hear and learn in the womb. So, the information varies. I can tell you from experience, and that's all I really have, in addition to the research, that it is possible to teach anyone at any age to develop their ear. So the younger, the better. Let's just put it that way. So don't get discouraged by these because I think they're harmful. I think these studies are harmful if the parent takes away from it that it's too late. It's never too late to start ear training. Okay. So we do know that babies absorb sound even during sleep. It kind of shapes their future abilities. One of the studies was that they kind of had a predictable syllable going while the baby was sleeping, but then when the syllable changed, the baby responded to it. So that's actually an important thing. That means that we are hearing things while we sleep, at least as babies. So we can work on kind of our inner hearing when we're very young. So some of the things we're doing wrong. We use screens, talking about computers, tablets, TVs. We use colors. We use noise. Instead of using these pure tones. When you're older and you're trying to learn perfect pitch, it's actually best to learn it on your own instrument and on an acoustic instrument. But we're not talking about adults right now. When you're a child, it's better to hear it on a consistent instrument where there's even more subtlety because you can still pick it up at that age. You can still pick up these subtleties that as adults, we need more help getting into. And the other thing we tend to do is we treat music as entertainment, not foundational learning. We view it as something where we think that it's nice to have music. Maybe it makes you more cultured. We treat it very generically, like we'll show kids what major versus minor sounds like, but we won't even use the same tunes. So we'll take Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and play it in major, but then we won't do it in minor. It's pretty easy to turn it to minor if you know how. And so we need comparisons. We need to give students and children and babies, and especially, we need to give them comparisons. We need to show them the difference between C and D. And we just need to tell them there is a difference, and then they'll pick up on it and they'll say, yeah, there's a difference. And they'll be able to pick up on it better than you can. The other thing is we tend to delay musical exposure too far past the ideal window. Now, again, if your child's older, it is still beneficial to give them proper ear training lessons because ear training helps with math, language skills, spatial awareness. It helps with everything. Memory. Music is kind of that missing link. Even if you don't want your child to be a musician, having that ability to understand relationships in space is critical for them being successful in other areas of their life, in my opinion. I think that, and a lot of research suggests that the ability to understand how music works and its relationships translates to other skills as well. So keep that in mind. You're not just training music, you're training your child's brain in one of the most creative ways that I think you can. It's the finest of the fine arts. Even painting is a fine art, but you can see it. Everybody can see it. Why? Well, we've been taught the colors. So music can be the same way, but we're not taught the sounds. And you need to start teaching your child the sounds now, like today, like 5 minutes ago. The best time to start is now. Or I guess they say the second best time to start is now. The best time to start is 2 years ago. You want to get in on this right now. So what babies really need? Calm. We need it to be calm. We need to have clean, calm, and consistent tones. This is different from adult training. If you've taken any of my relative pitch courses, you know that I like a little bit of distortion in there because it forces you to listen into the music. Different for babies. We need clean, calm, consistent tones. They need to be the same. Time. You need time. Time to absorb, not much time, maybe about 5 minutes a day, without overstimulation. You don't need to do ear training with a 4-month-old more than about 5 minutes a day. And then here's the trick. You do the ear training, but then throughout the rest of the day, you let them listen to music, you let them experiment with things that help to reinforce that ear training we did. And that's why in this program I've created for my own kid and for others, babyuretraining.com, what I have done is I have created a curated playlist for each week. So each week you have 1 hour worth of music. If you don't get through it all, that's fine. But the idea is you try and play it each day, and it reinforces the short little 3 to 5 minute ear training exercise. And then in addition to that, it's optional, but there's an immersion file. And what it is it's basically rain sounds and bird song, which is important for reasons that I'm too difficult to get into here, but it helps the child retain information. And you can play it during a nap or while they sleep. And so the file is it's less than 2 hours long. It's about 1 hour and 15 minutes, so that it kind of works for a natural nap cycle. It's just under 2 hours, and then they can wake up naturally, or you can set it on a loop to go all night if you like using sounds like white noise for your child. But you shouldn't use white noise because white noise actually affects learning. So we'll talk about that. And you also have to respect their natural auditory learning capacity. Every child's going to be different. Some will pick it up more quickly. Some will take more time. Some won't be able to go as far as others. That's just the same way it is with everything. But what you have to do, I think, is you have to give your child the best opportunity you can. Give them a chance to see how far they can go with this. And if they don't develop perfect pitch or a really good relative pitch or this understanding of music, you've still pushed them to develop. You've still taken them on a journey that helps them to learn. All right, so ear training for babies. This is the program that I've created. It's kind of a new way forward. It's what I have been doing with my child. She's now 2. We started preterm, before she was born. And again, we never used headphones on the stomach. I learned really early on that's actually very bad. They could be viewing it like a rock concert in there. It could be too loud. We don't want to do anything like that. So what we have here is it's a very minimalist, pitch-focused course designed for babies. So I label it as 4 months to 5 years. I think that within that window, you've got a chance to really do something great with your kids. After that, I think you have to do a different type of ear training, more traditional ear training. And that's a different course altogether. But for infants up to about 5 years, you can really do a lot of immersion stuff and let the ear training kind of teach the child yourself. You don't need to know anything about music. The child just picks up on it. There's no clutter. It's appropriate visuals. And we focus kind of on this tonal exposure with really perfect notes. You end up getting weekly downloadable videos and audio aligned with brain development. So the idea here is that each week you get a new video and new audio file. The video should be played a couple times a day, and there's an instruction sheet that goes along with this. It's a very brief, like 1-page thing, just to give you some tips. And the audio is for when you're on the go. You want to just play it for a few moments so that you can reinforce it throughout the day a couple times. So you get both video and audio that you can download, and then you can stream it to your TV, whatever you want to do. I found that the first couple nights that I played the first video, which is essentially a cat, my child was interested, but then the next night she actually started asking for it. And another student asked for the video to be played again. So, I mean, that's promising. You want to get them engaged. The other day, and this may or may not be related, but when we put her down for her nap, she actually wanted to get out of the crib. She ran and got her little play keyboard and she was playing with it in the crib. So they may start to want to try and figure these things out. Like my child, maybe yours is the same. Anytime that she is introduced to something new, she goes at it until she kind of masters it. Like with rolling over, it was just 3 or 4 days of her constantly trying to roll over until she finally got it. And it was a little bit scary. Those of you that have a child, you know that what I mean by that. But she works till she masters something. So not all kids are going to be the same. Every kid's different. But the idea is that you just expose them to this. You don't worry about how they react. It doesn't really matter because they're still getting the exposure. So let's talk a little bit about the science behind it. So if you go to babyeartraining.com, all the research is actually cited. The main research that I've used. And the thing is, I've been doing this for so long. As a university professor, I looked into so many different methods for ear training in general that I kind of have this conglomeration of information now, and I don't necessarily know where every piece of information came from at this point, but it's all kind of been solidified into one cohesive technique at this point. But we know that pitch exposure enhances language development. We also know that sound processing during sleep strengthens neural pathways for babies. But there's a catch to it. They have to be dynamic sounds. It can't be white noise. Dynamic sounds, things that are novel. They build true auditory skills. So it can't just be the same thing, but there's a fine line between having too much repetition and not enough. So when you listen to kind of this immersion file, when you get the course, you'll see that the first one has C's being played at different octaves. It's very carefully structured so that you kind of get the same C for a while, and then it changes octave. And then every now and then you'll hear a major chord. And it's very soft beneath the texture of rain sounds and bird song, so that the brain is stimulated but not too much. And as the audio goes on, the time between hearing a note and just nature sounds is increased. And it's increased using a very particular pattern of repetition, so that one, it helps the child go to sleep because they're kind of waiting for the next sound, and as they wait, they kind of doze off. That's what I've noticed. And two, it doesn't overwhelm. So as you get deeper into sleep, eventually what happens is you only hear the sound every 2 minutes or so. So that's kind of how the program is designed. But there's a lot of science behind this, and you really have to get into this now if you have a child. You want to start doing this early. And I mean, she still sleeps in the same room with us, so we get the wind sounds and not the wind sounds, but rain sounds, bird song, and the tones as well, and it hasn't disrupted our sleep. All right, so how does it work? So you get one new tone introduced every 2 weeks, and weekly audio and video files. It's every 2 weeks because really we work on C for 2 weeks, and then C would be major week 1, minor week 2. But for the sleep files, we don't do minor. We stick to major because we want to just have consonant sounds. We don't want it to do anything during the sleep process. We want it to be happy, pleasant sounds. We don't want to go minor while we're sleeping. But same with, even my intervals for sleep. You probably want to stick to the perfect intervals and the consonant intervals, like the 4th, 5th, 3rd, 6th. You don't want to do like a tritone minor second while you're sleeping. Somebody made a really funny comment about that. Said they just have nightmares. Like, well, yeah, don't do a major 7th or a minor 2nd while you're sleeping. If you have associations with those tones as being dissonant and scary, if you don't view them as scary, I mean, I don't view them as scary, they're just a sound to me, then it'll probably be fine. But we want to keep to really consonant, resonant sounds while we're sleeping. And you listen daily. You just press play on this. You have your child listen daily. You can do it during naps, playtime, or bedtime. I give a structure for this. I actually explain how it works. There's particular times during the day where it's more ideal, but really just playing it is what matters. I'm also going to give you a preview of this in just a minute. And they're parent friendly, they're screen free mostly. The video, obviously, it's about 3 minutes where they can watch various animations go on that help to reinforce the sound of the notes, but it's got a research backed structure. So you want to start early, want to kind of grow the musical mind of your child. I do believe that pitch is a sort of language, and babies do deserve fluency, and they can get fluency, but you have to start young and you have to be consistent. You know, when they're a baby, they do what you tell them to do. You're responsible for their growth. So you want to start these things young, and you want to be consistent. So as they get older, maybe it becomes something fun. And don't make it a chore. Make it something fun. I talk about all this in the actual course here. And as far as the course goes, I mean, I designed this as like a toy. If you go out and buy a toy for your child, you give it to your child, they kind of play with it. You don't necessarily have to explain it. You might interact a little bit, show them how it works if you want to. That helps build the bond a little bit. But it needs to be simple, where the parent doesn't actually have to understand how it works. They just have to know that they press play a few times a day, they're good to go. So we want to help your child develop this deep tonal awareness before they even learn to speak. And this ear training for babies is just my solution for children now. I've been doing a lot of ear training courses. I've got the Flawless course for adults, for people that have a little bit of music knowledge and it takes them further. I've got the composer inner ear training for serious students, and I've got stuff for people that just want to learn how to read notes on the staff. And so this is sort of the one product that's really missing, geared towards babies. And it's one of those things where I know from experience that exposure to music in this way is important. Think of this as like a book you might buy for your child to read them. That teaches colors. Well, this is one of the many things you can do to teach the colors of sound, so they can understand what C sounds like and D sounds like and E sounds like. So you want to start them young, and you'll be able to see how your child develops and grows with this course. But you have to do it daily, just like everything else. I mean, they don't really take days off from seeing colors and numbers. And even when it's no longer on the TV or in a book or you're talking to them, they'll often, as they start to master something, start to count. They'll count objects. My child's doing that. She's counting to 10 all the time, and she's counting objects. So you give them this basic information, and then it becomes part of their life. And that's how it expands. So if you want to learn more, you can go over to babyeartraining.com. It's a page on my website. And what we're going to do right now is I'm just going to show you the first 30 seconds or so of a video. And I'm actually going to post this video for free. It's the first week video, but again, every week it comes with this video you're about to see. It comes with information on how to employ this with kind of best practices. It comes with an audio file, a curated playlist, and every week I give you tips. So I'm training you too. What I'm trying to do is the tips, you don't have to follow if you don't want to, but each week you'll get 1 to 3 things you can do with your child. And they're not just like random things. They're progressive. So I'm teaching you how to teach your child is what I'm doing. So in a sense, this course is giving the parents short little private lessons as well. Like, do this with your child, learn how to do it, and then I'll give you another tip the next week. And we just make it really easy so that over the 6 months that you're getting these files, there's 24 in total. Think of it as 24 lessons. You will be learning how to teach your child when the course is over. And that'll be great because then you can interact, even if you don't know anything about music. Okay, so now I'm going to play you the first 30 seconds, and there will be a link where you can go and check out the full video for the first week because I want you to see kind of what you're getting, and you can try it out with your kids, see if they like it. So it'll be available on YouTube. It'll be a kids video, which means there shouldn't be any ads on it. C major, C, E, G, C major, C, E, G, C major, C major, C like a cat, C major, C, E, G,